You're dealing with the most toxic fluid in your body. Like if you had a nuclear power plant and you're trying to get rid of the radioactive waste, like it's part of what you use to make power, but then you have to get rid of this toxicity.
Good morning, Dr. Garrett. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm excited to jump into this with you today.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
You know, I read about you online and toxic bile theory. My first question, probably like a lot of people listening, is, what exactly is toxic bile theory, and like what led you to sort of develop this paradigm shifting concept?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I always believed that there was something in common that was making people sick. There was like some common mechanism. It was, when I was coming up in health and naturopathic medicine and nutrition and all that stuff, I mean, everybody goes through phases, right? They go through like the candida phase and the toxic metal phase and the probiotics phase and the gut biome, and carbs are bad and fat is bad, and they go through paleo and low carb and keto, and like you go through all these things, and I'd see people get better from some of them for a while and then they'd fade away. I mean, I tried vegetarianism, I tried paleo, I tried all this stuff, and I felt like there was something that was missing to everybody's approaches, and this is why people would get better for a while and then it would go away. And I started thinking about, like herbs. Nobody has an herb deficiency or like philosophical things of like what would be causing people's problems. Well, I came to toxicities and deficiencies. So how did I get to toxic bile theory? Well, I was getting into supplementing minerals and seeing that people were benefiting from that. And the first thing where I kind of went off the rails of the norm was vitamin D supplements. I started to realize that they weren't actually good for people and they were calcifying people. And on hair tests, you can tell when somebody's been using them, and you see all this. So then that led me to eventually Matt Stone of 180 Degree Health, who is a very contrarian guy. He says to me on one of his comments, he wrote an article about it. He's like, you need to check out vitamin A toxicity. As I started doing that with myself and my clients, I looked back through my health history and I realized how many different ways I poisoned myself with vitamin A. So then that led to eventually I get into Anthony Mawson's work. And Anthony Mawson has written about, I think I counted up 34 papers where he has connected vitamin A retinoic acid spilling out of the liver into the blood as causing, like as related to the symptoms of many, many health diseases, many health conditions or diseases. Okay. So there was that. And I tend to take really good ideas and then expand upon them. So I started looking into, the word cholestasis comes up, which is basically bile leaking into your blood. That's the definition of it. It's bile is going places it's not supposed to go. So cholestasis, like, it means bile backing up or going into places that it shouldn't, especially your blood. Now, if anybody wants other videos on this, my YouTube, it's Nutrition Detective, and you want to watch live stream 71 or live stream 53 for like my longer background on this. But so what I came to was that I started realizing that if the vitamin A was leaking into the blood, it was the bile leaking into the blood. And the bile, the key thing to know about the bile is that the bile is how your liver detoxes. Like nothing, one of the key things about detox to understand is that detox hasn't really happened until something has left your body. Like while it's still in there, it's still causing problems. Like people talk about accelerating the liver and doing all this stuff. It doesn't matter until you pooped it out. That's a key thing to understand. How does your liver get rid of toxins? Because your liver is your main detox organ. It puts it into the bile. The bile is supposed to go into your intestines and be pooped out. That's what we want. It doesn't all get pooped out. We reabsorb. The standard American diet's percentage that they give in the research is we reabsorb through the intestines about 95% of the bile. And we only poop out on a standard American diet about 5%. But that is how the liver gets rid of toxins. It's like, think of a sewage processing plant. A sewage processing plant, it processes the sewage, but it still has to get rid of it for it to go anywhere. So that's what the liver does. By definition, that bile is the most toxic thing in the human body. The liver has processed all this stuff, and the liver says, I got to get rid of this, puts it in the bile. There are beneficial things to bile, like it does help with digestion, and it does help prevent SIBO in the upper parts of the intestine. Like we need it, but we also want to get rid of it. So one of the other sayings is that as you starting to understand toxic bile theory is bile is the cause of your health problems. Bile leaking into your blood and going places it's not supposed to be is the cause of your health problems. And getting rid of the bile properly as well as you can is the solution to your health problems. So it's involved both. And if you push things too hard and you dump too much bile, you can get more symptoms. So we have to be, I have a saying called, this is not a game. You're dealing with the most toxic fluid in your body. Like if you had a nuclear power plant and you're trying to get rid of the radioactive waste, like it's part of what you use to make power, but then you have to get rid of this toxicity. Like it's just a byproduct. It's just going to be there all the time. So the more toxic people get, the more toxic their bile gets. The slower people's detox goes, which most people don't know that many of the things that we do these days, supplements, diet approaches, all this stuff, slow down detox. That people don't actually understand very much about the science of detox at all. They just want to take things that give them diarrhea, and then they're like, I'm detoxing. And you go, no. Or they'll say, blueberries detox you. And I go, you're going to have to show me a reference on that, because I could show you that the polyphenols in blueberries slow down ALDH, and they're slowing down the most important detox enzyme in your body. So people will just say things on the internet. They just make up stuff. They're like, I like this food, so I'm going to say it helps detox. It just doesn't work. So the bile can get so toxic that it can eat holes through the liver cells that make it, through the little teeny tiny bile ducts in the liver. So you can leak bile from those directly into the bloodstream, directly from the liver into the bloodstream. That is called intrahepatic cholestasis, or leaking from within the liver itself into the blood. Then the bile that goes into the bile ducts can eat holes in those bile ducts. The bile that goes into the intestines can eat holes in the intestines. This is what everybody's talking about with leaky gut. This is the only legit explanation for leaky gut that's out there. You are eating holes through your gut, and I could show you studies that say that bile acids modulate or control leaky gut. Now, if the bile goes backwards up into your stomach, it will eat holes in your stomach. I mean, you can absorb bile. I have the research. You can absorb bile directly from your stomach into your bloodstream. Okay. The bile can eat holes in your stomach. We call those ulcers. The bile can eat away at your intestines. That's what we call celiac. Like it's eating away the villi. What else is eating away at the villi? Like one of the things to connect vitamin A to this is that vitamin A, retinoic acid, the active form of vitamin A, it's a chemical peel. It's used in aesthetics for people to put on their faces. It dissolves the upper layers of cells. It induces the lower levels of cell to reproduce. And so you get a nicer looking face for a bit. But it eats away at cells. We get rid of vitamin A and retinoic acid through the bile. It's giving you a chemical peel wherever it goes. It's eating away at your guts. So, and this has been shown and theorized in other papers too. So then you have these holes. You dump bile. You leak bile into your bloodstream. You now have the most toxic fluid by definition going into your bloodstream and going everywhere in your body. Where do you show your symptoms? Well, I talk about this. There's what toxins are in your bile will change the pattern of the symptoms. How much bile you're leaking will change the intensity of your symptoms. The actual recipe of the bile, I go over this every week in my live streams about the recipe of the bile causing different patterns of disease pictures. And then you have like your genetics, and then you have your nutrition status, like what nutrients do you have to protect you or not. So we have all these things as to how these different diseases present themselves. And what do we do to fix it? Well, we figure out ways to not cause more leaking. We figure out ways to make the bile less toxic, and we figure out ways to give the body what it needs in terms of nutrients. And then we figure out how to help the body facilitate the removal of stored toxins, because the liver does store toxins. This has been known since like the early 1900s. Influencers today are denying it. It's crazy. But anyway, that's toxic bile theory. It is the most toxic fluid in your body leaking into your bloodstream, and that is causing your symptoms.
The average person listening is probably like, whoa, this sounds very serious. I need to pay more attention. Like, how prevalent would you say vitamin A toxicity is in today's society?
So the only way to truly assess, so people will say, well, I got a vitamin A test and I was in the normal range, like a vitamin A blood test, a serum retinol test. Okay. I can show you case studies, and I can show you in the research where multiple places where they quote and they say, you can actually, they showed a guy, he was technically vitamin A deficient on his blood test. The doctors said, he had liver problems, huge liver problems. The doctors decided, based on what they had questioned him about on his food and his supplements, and they decided that he had vitamin A toxicity, even though his serum retinol was technically deficient. They do a liver biopsy. his liver biopsy had crazy amounts of vitamin A in it. He had the signs in his liver of vitamin A toxicity, and he had the vitamin A. They could analyze it. They analyzed the tissue. So then they put him on a low vitamin A diet. Lo and behold, I think it was either 8 weeks or 12 weeks later, his blood vitamin A had gone to technically toxic levels. And then his liver concentrations had gone significantly down. So we can have people out there who listen to this and they want to go run a vitamin A test. Well, your doctor doesn't know how to analyze it at all. And you could have low vitamin A in your blood and still be absolutely toxic in your liver. So we know that if people have high vitamin A in their blood, they're definitely toxic. Okay. If they have normal vitamin A in their blood, they're toxic. The liver is the only place where you can really find out true vitamin A toxicity. The blood doesn't give it away to you. And 9 of the 27 people had diagnosable vitamin A toxicity in their liver by the standards. So 33%. I've posted in my thread, I posted studies from Africa, like where they'll say, there's like a vitamin A deficiency epidemic in Africa, right? I can show you studies from the 1950s, 2 separate studies, liver biopsies. 50% of the livers they biopsied had diagnosable vitamin A toxicity, and they were eating mostly carotenoids, like sweet potatoes and yams and stuff like that. People will say, you can't convert beta-carotene into vitamin A. Well, oh yeah, you can. We can. You will store it in your liver as retinol. And then that's when when your liver is vitamin A toxic, for sure, that's when you start turning orange. Well, it's not as easy to see orange in Africans. It's just not as easy. But there was a study on kids in Africa in mango season. They were supplementing these kids. They ate vitamin A fortified flour, and then they were eating mangoes, and they would turn orange during mango season. And they said that when the kids turned orange, that was like they were above the liver level of vitamin A toxicity. Now, doctors won't do liver biopsies for people. They won't even create the test of a serum retinaldehyde, which is another form of vitamin A. And they won't create a test of serum retinoic acid, which is the worst form of vitamin A. So they'll measure serum retinol. It's kind of like with vitamin D. They measure the storage form. Why would you? It's like when they look at thyroid, they measure TSH. They don't measure the thyroid hormones most times. Why are they not measuring the active stuff, the stuff that's really causing the damage? Well, I think it's because they don't want to see it. And then people would start looking and they go, serum retinoic acid. I looked up retinoic acid and it's used as chemotherapy. I don't know if I really want that in my body. So yeah, it's at least, basically I put it this way, based on the people I help. If you have health problems, you're probably vitamin A toxic. There's other problems. Of course there's other problems. It's a contributor. Think of it this way. You could have made your health problems come about because of too much vitamin A, or all the other things you might have been doing with your health could have slowed down your detox so that then you can't get rid of anything. And if you take in anything, this is the key math thing that people need to understand about detox. If you take in more of something that is easily stored in your body, if you take it in faster than you can get rid of it, it's just math. You build it up. So when people say, vitamin A toxicity only happens from high doses of supplements over the short term, you go, no, this is a fat soluble, I call them fat storable compound. So like I said, it's just like a bank account. If you put more money in that bank account than you take out, that bank account grows. Well, this is a bad bank account. This is a toxicity bank account. So if you can't detox it fast enough, because these same similar detox pathways do all this stuff, if you can't get rid of it fast enough, you accumulate it. That's the key word. Anybody who's searching for toxins on PubMed or wherever, don't use the term store. Use the term accumulate. And look up the word content. Like, those are the key things to find these things in the literature.
You mentioned labs, right? A lot of people go get their blood drawn and say, okay, I see this high level, right? Are there other maybe symptoms or conditions that might be these toxicities manifesting themselves in people that they may not be aware that this is related to vitamin A?
The crazy thing with vitamin A is that, we have to first understand that the whole basis of modern pharma cartel medicine is using toxins to suppress symptoms. That's what they do. So people would be like, oh, I took Accutane and it made my acne go away, which is Accutane is retinoic acid. It's 13-cis retinoic acid. Let me be clear on this. Accutane is known to be like one of the highest side effect causing medications out there. It is ruining the fertility of teenagers that use it. Absolutely. There's a whole, they're trying to get a class action lawsuit and to get a black box warning on Accutane. There's a group out there destroying fertility of the youth. But people will be like, but it got rid of my acne. And I'm like, no, it suppressed your detox. What? So what Accutane does, well, 13-cis retinoic acid. Accutane is 13-cis retinoic acid. If you eat vitamin A, I can show you in the research that normal people eating vitamin A have 13-cis retinoic acid in their blood and in their urine. So if you are eating vitamin A, you are turning it into some of it into Accutane in your system. So this is where some of the side effects can come from. The more you eat of it, the more Accutane you make, the more retin A you make in your system. It's not good. How does Accutane help acne? It reduces the oil secretion out of your skin. Okay? What might you be trying to detox via these oils? Well, you're trying to detox fat-soluble substances. Accutane is also known for reducing your saliva production and your tear production. Lots of people get side effects of dry eyes and a dry mouth. Your body detoxes through its fluids. So it really just shut down detox, which means you damage the liver. And you can damage the liver for a long time. Some people are like, my acne never came back. Well, your liver was damaged for the long term. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, but I got these symptoms after it. Well, that was how it changed. Like, one of the biggest things that people don't understand is you can change one disease into another. And then you have people who misinterpret. They're like, oh, I cured this disease. I fixed this. But they didn't realize that they just turned it into something else. And the most common things that give away vitamin A toxicity are skin issues, eye issues, digestive issues. The funny thing is skin issues and eye issues are exactly what people say you need vitamin A to fix. And then there's zinc deficiency. Zinc deficiency plays a huge role in it. I mean, I can show you a study that had women, the more carrots that the women ate, carrots specifically, the worse their night vision was. But they'll say that you need vitamin A for night vision. How does that work? And we have now Grant Jenneru, the guy I mentioned earlier. He's now at his 10-year anniversary mark of being on an extremely low vitamin A diet. His eyesight's amazing. His skin is amazing. He looks great. He's 64. And he's fixed chronic kidney disease. Like, he was going to be going on dialysis. He fixed it completely. He had terrible jaundice. I mean, he was yellow head to toe. Not from vitamin A toxicity, but from jaundice, which is bilirubin. It's different. And then he had horrible eczema. The eczema was what bothered him the most because it was so painful. So he fixed all of those. And that was where I was reading it, and I went, wow, he just changed his diet to, I mean, it was simple. It was beef or bison, brown or white rice, and black beans. Now, not everybody has to do that. That's not the only low vitamin A diet. That's what Grant did. He's been eating mostly that diet for 10 years. He hasn't died. His eyes haven't fallen out of his head. His skin is not falling off. Some people try to claim that I say every disease is related to vitamin A, and that's far from the truth. But what we do in the Love Your Liver program, we have three pillars, really. We reduce the toxins coming in. Reduce or minimize the toxins coming in. We facilitate the removal of stored toxins. We give the body the nutrients that it needs, which is way fewer than most people think. And then we let the body do its magic. That's it.
Would you say that there's a certain, maybe groups of people that are more affected by toxic bile and vitamin A toxicity than others?
Well, actually, one of the things that we've had really good results with is fertility. People who they have infertility issues, whether it's men or women. During pregnancy, a paper said subclinical, so that means below the level that the doctors can find it. Subclinical means it's the doctors know it's there. Their tests just don't tell them that it's there. Subclinical intrahepatic cholestasis is now considered a normal part of pregnancy. That's what the paper ended with. It's normal for you to be leaking bile into your blood during pregnancy. And we have tons of women, right, who feel like pregnancy sucks. Like, they feel terrible. And then we have people going through our program, and these women have had babies before, and then they start doing our stuff, and then all of a sudden they're like, that was the easiest pregnancy I've ever had. I felt better. I felt great through it. This kid is now the healthiest kid of all my kids that I've had. They don't have the colic. They don't have all these their nursing problems, milk production problems go away, and we have men. We have multiple men who are, we don't give them herbs to boost testosterone. We just have guy after guy after guy being like, gee, my testosterone levels just went way up, which is always good for fertility, right? So those are big indicators. Fertility is health. Health is fertility. As an example, one of the things I rail on is copper toxicity. Copper makes people infertile. This is very easy to understand once you realize that they will put a copper wire into women's cervixes to make them infertile.
Pretty obvious.
And then we can go into the research on like birth control pills. And birth control pills, it has been known since 1975 that birth control pills cause cholestasis, liver injury. Go look up that term, liver injury. That means cholestasis. Okay. I have tons of other studies. I need to get this Twitter thread out showing that over and over, birth control pills raise the level of vitamin A and copper in the blood, which means you are leaking bile into the blood. Your liver was trying to get rid of the copper and the vitamin A through the bile, but it leaked into the blood. High vitamin A, high copper, infertility. Okay. There's another funny thing about the blood tests, which is as people age, the research shows that their serum retinol, their blood vitamin A, and their serum copper rise with age. Do people tend to generally feel better or worse as they get older? They feel worse. Like, we just keep putting these things together and showing people that so like infertility thing, if people have infertility or low testosterone, you probably got a vitamin A toxicity problem. You probably got a copper toxicity problem. If you are having problems with fertility, like, this is the term we use that Joshua Lysick gave me, which is I make people dangerously fertile. That's probably what we're going to call the book.
Right. You mentioned your methods, right, versus maybe the sort of conventional detox methods that people are told, but maybe by their primary care physician or other. Like, how do you sort of stack yours up? Because yours are definitely more innovative, I would say, to this nutrition and detoxification.
Well, I'll try to pick some of the big ones that I kind of rail against. So fasting. I'm not totally against fasting. I'm not totally against it. However, the reason why a lot of people feel better when they start eating less food or no food or even no water, like one of the reasons a lot of people are moving towards fasting right now is because I believe they've all been doing the wrong diets. So they came to the point where, like, I tried this diet, I tried this diet, I tried this diet, I tried this diet. I fasted and I felt better. I didn't eat and I felt better. Well, that's because your diet sucked. All of the diets you were on sucked. You didn't eat and you felt better. It shouldn't be. This should make sense. And I predicted this several years ago. I said, we're going to get to the point because everybody doesn't know what to eat and everybody's confused. Like, some big keto guy just went to the like drinking sugar water diet. And he's like, I'm losing so much weight. And I'm like, who in the world by now doesn't realize that drinking sugar is bad for you and that it's going to end badly? So we have all these people jumping from diet to diet, and now they're at fasting. The only logical solution was to not eat or drink anything if they all had the wrong frameworks. Okay. One of the things you don't do much on fasting is dump bile. Eating things like fats or eating things like soluble fiber and having stressful things happen, which, like, heat, sweating, exercise, stress. What do people try to do during fasting? Well, they try to minimize those. So between not eating and trying to minimize their stress, they're not dumping bile. If you're not dumping bile, you're not leaking bile. If you're not leaking bile, you're giving your liver a chance to catch up on cleaning up the bile that was in your blood already that had leaked there. And then all of a sudden, after a day or two, you're like, my mind is so clear, I have energy, and everybody feels great. And then they do it for a while, and then what happens when they go back to eating? They feel like crap again.
Yeah, presents themselves again as problems.
And then why do they say to eat lightly when you come out of fasting? Because if you eat a big, fat, rich meal, you're going to dump all that bile you've been storing up all at once, and you're going to leak all that into your system, and you're going to feel terrible. So you start slowly back into it. So that's fasting. Enemas. Enemas can be helpful. Coffee enemas, that stuff. Especially coffee enemas. What are they doing? Coffee triggers a bile dump. This is why bile is the trigger for you to poop. And this, I have research showing this. Constipated people don't have very much bile in their poop. Diarrhea folks have a lot of bile in their poop. Normal people have a normal amount of bile in their poop. So coffee, when you drink it in the morning, it triggers a bile dump, and then you have your bowel movement, right? Most people understand that. They've had this many times. Coffee enema is going to trigger a bile dump because it's a bitter compound. Bitter compounds in nature are generally toxic. Your liver gets rid of toxins through the bile, so you trigger a bile dump. And then the liquid in the enema induces diarrhea. Like it triggers a diarrhea. So coffee enema, in a way, is a way to get bile out of your system very quickly. I let people who want to do enemas do them. I don't like encourage them. I don't push them. Because, it's a sensitive area and people can do it if they want. If people come to me and they're like, if you're out there and you're watching this and you go, when I do a coffee enema, I feel amazing after it. This is showing you that your toxic bile is causing your symptoms. Okay, so we got that. Taking herbs to detox. Nobody has an herb deficiency. Herbs, a lot of drugs out there are made based on plant compounds, right? They're just tweaks on plant compounds. So therefore, drugs are like strong herbs, or you could say herbs are like weak drugs. So weak drugs have less side effects, and stronger drugs, like real drugs, have more side effects. Herbs tend to be forcing your body to do something that it can't do, or they're forcing it to do something that it doesn't want to do. They're making your body do something. Milk thistle, if people really look into the research on milk thistle, the supposed amazing liver herb, the long-term research on milk thistle, it hurts your liver. It's not good for your liver. So we don't use herbs either. Like saunas and sweating, that's great. Absolutely. One of the things that people, if they want to do it or they are into the idea of it, is there was a really great study on Gulf War veterans who were poisoned by those fires that they would burn all the junk and all that
fire
stuff
pits,
with.
yeah.
So some people say, oh, it's the Scientology sauna detox or whatever, because L. Ron Hubbard was the first guy to promote it. Okay. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. He was onto something. I'm not a Scientologist. I have nothing to do with the man, but he had a good idea, and it does work. So you take some flush niacin, nicotinic acid, flush niacin, nicotinic acid, never niacinamide, never nicotinamide, no other form of niacin. Flush niacin, crystalline, quick release, not slow release, not no flush. You want the stuff that could give you the flush. You do that. You do some cardio for like 20 to 30 minutes, just mild to moderate. And then you get in a sauna or something to get your sweating going. And these veterans were, I think they were mostly on disability. They were doing like 2 to 3 hours in the sauna. Most normal people don't have the time.
A lot. Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot.
So they did that. And then after, like, I think it was 8 weeks or something, after they had worked up to, was it 3,000 milligrams of flush niacin or 5,000 milligrams of flush niacin? So a high dose. They saw massive improvements in their quality of life and their disease scores. Their disease scores went way down. So that's just a detox. That's just flush niacin is, when we're talking about detox science, flush niacin provides NAD. NAD is the cellular gasoline to run your detox engine. You need it. So we can use that. You don't want to push it too hard because, right, you push on the gas too hard, you can crash, right? But you start going up start very slowly, work your way up, and you can really accelerate things by getting the right amount of flush niacin. Niacin's not a B vitamin. It is an amino acid. It is derived from tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid. Niacin is not a vitamin either. It's more related to protein than it is any vitamin.
You did touch a little bit on dairy first, earlier on, but just overall dietary recommendations versus what you're seeing in your findings with toxic bile and vitamin A toxicities.
Okay, well, I just did a whole show on our basic diet. I think it was like live stream 158, where I went over it was like 2 hours of going over the diet generalities of it. So I'll keep it simple here. I'll just talk about vitamin A. So like one of the funny things that people are recommended to do is eat a rainbow, right? Eat a rainbow of colors and get all your phytonutrients. None of those things are essential. Phytonutrients, that's just another name to try to sell you to buy more supplements and do these other things that aren't good for you. Eat a rainbow it's a very new thing. Like, they have bred these plants to be brighter in color. Nobody looks at traditional diets and sees tons of color in it. It was like white and green and brown. Like, those were traditional diets. They were not brightly colored. So the colors that we avoid in the plant world, when we're talking about the part of the plant that you eat, this is very important. The part of the plant that you eat, we do not eat the part of the plant that is yellow or red or orange or dark green. So if the color of the part of the plant you're eating is those colors, we generally do not eat it. The colors that we do eat, white, off-white, light green. So like a cucumber, you can peel it. You can take off the dark green and then you're left with whitish. That's fine. A banana, you can peel off the yellow, get to the whitish. It's very traditional for people to peel fruits and vegetables very deeply. People have told me this, that like in Europe and other places, they were still peeling it really deeply. Because the skin, as opposed to what we're told, they're like, all the vitamins are in the skin. And I'm like, no, the skin is the skin. How do we defend things in the world? We defend things with a wall and defenses. Like humans, we have a skull to protect our brain. We have a rib cage to protect our heart and our lungs. We put walls around things. Fruits and vegetables have skin. Fruits and vegetables do biochemical warfare as their defense and their offense. Where would the plant put the most of their biochemical defenses? They put it in the skin. So we avoid eating the skin, generally. And the skin is usually the brightest and strongest and darkest color. Like a couple of fruits that we love on the program, we generally bananas and apples. I'm to the point now where if you want to peel your apples, make sure they're organic. But if you want to peel your apples, peel them. If you don't, I'm not that worried about it. There's actually some benefits to the apple skin, I think, too, for some people. So those are just like some examples in the plant world. Then we get into, and we do really like beans and whole grains, especially oats and barley, because these have lots of soluble fiber in them. Soluble fiber in them adsorbs, or you could say binds up, toxic bile in your gut. It holds onto it. So it helps you poop it out so it doesn't get reabsorbed. Soluble fiber or carbohydrates are also necessary to feed your bifidobacteria. And if you don't feed the most health-promoting bacteria in your gut. So if you don't feed your bifido, you're going to get a dysbiosis. This is one of the problems that I've seen with long-term carnivore diets where there's not a lot of carbs. Carbs or fiber. There's no carbs or fiber. They starve their bifido. They eventually get a dysbiosis. We are designed to be omnivores. It's crazy when I have people arguing over vegan or carnivore, and I'm like, humans have qualities of both. This is why we dominate the planet. We can eat and survive on almost anything. I don't need to pick one or the other. So then let's get into the animal products. The things we don't eat in general. High vitamin A foods. Dairy, as a general rule. Dairy has vitamin A in the fat, in the casein protein, and in the whey protein. I can show it all in the literature. So dairy is full of vitamin A everywhere. Egg yolks, they're yellow, right?
Yeah, it's eggs.
Liver and kidneys, we don't eat organ meats, as a general rule. If it's a muscle, like people will be like, but what about tongue? And I'm like, tongue's not an organ, tongue's muscle. And I'm like, if it's a muscle, it's fine. Or see, people will say, what about heart? And I'm like, heart's a muscle. Heart's not like a detox organ like liver and kidneys. I'm not so sure about eating tripe like intestines. I'm just not going to do it. So whatever, you can have it. So then the last thing is pork. Now, here's the confusing thing. You'll look at nutritional database things and they'll say, oh, a pork chop has like 0 vitamin A. There is enough vitamin A in lard that they actually called it lard. They didn't know what it was. They called it lard factor in the past, and they knew it had vitamin A activity. So vitamin A science is terrible at finding things. They're terrible. It's almost like purposeful. But if you go into the research, they actually said there's enough vitamin A activity, and they actually finally said it is vitamin A in pork, that they had previously named it lard factor, and it's a synonym on chemical websites. Lard factor is a synonym for vitamin A. So this is the key thing, is we have to sometimes on some of these things know that there's vitamin A in things that they don't find, that they don't report. Remember, they measure retinol or retinol esters in things. They don't measure retinaldehyde. They don't measure retinoic acid. So if these things are in there, they don't find them on their analysis, and they don't say it's there. That's the general gist of it. We just try to avoid, we really try to avoid those higher vitamin A foods. And then we see people improve.
Right. Well, and you did also touch a little bit on supplements as well. I mean, I know your perspective might, differ from traditional views, but how does it specifically differ from those views, especially regarding vitamin A?
Well, people can see huge improvements fairly quick if they're self-poisoning themselves. Like I was going to do something like the vitamin D fad right now. Oh my gosh, vitamin D3. Everybody's like, you need your vitamin D supplements to bring it up. No, you absolutely don't. It's a disaster. So now, like, the list of supplements that we use in our program is quite small and tight and very focused. I'll run through them real quick. One of them is flush niacin or nicotinic acid, which is all these things, just so anybody knows. If somebody's like, how much should I take? We don't do protocols. We respect the individual. I'm a 200-pound man. I'm not going to take the same amount of something. I'm not going to need the same amount of something as a 100-pound woman. Like, that's ludicrous to give one recommendation for all humans. Like, so people should be aware, beware of people who give just, everybody needs X amount of this a day. That's a crock. Then we also sell an organic sun fiber, which it's called PHGG, which has been shown to feed both lactobacillus and bifido, which are the two major classes of probiotics that we really want to help. People are usually imbalanced one way or the other, and so we can help both of them at the same time. We do some probiotics. Probiotics are all try it and see. I tell people, like, this is try it and see. If you don't feel good on it, stop it. Do not keep taking it and dig your hole deeper. That's a big thing we do. Crazy saying, right? Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. Like, why? People have forgotten this simple thing. Like, I don't feel good when I do this. Then don't do it. That doesn't mean things that make you feel better are automatically good for you, because then, how do people get stuck on weed and cocaine and amphetamines? And they're like, this feels amazing. And then you go, well, that's not good for you. You can't just live for like hedonism. That's not how this works. So we get into, the flush niacin, people might say, well, I don't feel good when I get the flush. Well, this is an accelerated detox process. That's what the flush is. The flush is an extremely accelerated detox process. Detox can kind of suck. But when you do it right and you understand this, people notice their symptoms overall getting better as they go. So this is one of the exceptions. Flush niacin is one of the exceptions. But I still tell people, like, if you don't tolerate the flush and you don't like it, then just take less. You don't have to push into suffering. That's not what we do. Then there's, I call them the electrolyte section. There is sodium, like salt. We do need some salt. Many people are overdoing it. Some people are underdoing it. We all need a really good salt. Most of the refined salts out there these days are going to have all sorts of forever chemicals and microplastics and all this stuff in there. We get very clean salt. I like Jacobsen salt. They refine it with water, and there's no microplastics in it, and we salt our food to taste, because we give animals salt licks, right? We trust that animals can regulate their own salt intake. So I trust that most humans can regulate their own salt intake. The only thing I tell people is if your friends or your family is like, dude, you salt your food like crazy, you're probably doing too much. If you're putting salt in every glass of water you drink, you're probably doing too much. Then we have potassium. Deficiency is everywhere. Potassium is the thing that if people get right, they can have the quickest improvements in how they feel. Absolutely. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, if you get the right type and dose of potassium, whether that's bananas or coconut water or powders or pills, You get the right type and the right dose, 10 to 20 minutes, you can feel significantly better. I'm not telling people to go overdose. I'm just saying when you get it right, it's amazing. Then there's magnesium. Topical magnesium, in my opinion, magnesium you absorb through the skin is about 10 times as effective as pills. There's no doubt in my mind, no doubt on hair analysis, that topical magnesium is absorbed the best. The other main section is what I call the big minerals. These are chronically deficient everywhere. They are critical to detox. I won't go over them in detail, but zinc, huge. The highest food in zinc is red meat. The only zinc supplements that we use are either zinc picolinate or zinc niacinate. Then there's selenium. Selenium is critical for thyroid function. Selenium is critical for, hormone balance. Molybdenum is the last mineral we use of the big minerals. Molybdenum, many people have not heard of it. Many people cannot even pronounce it. It's Moly, M-O-L-Y-B, D-E-N-U-M, molybdenum. That is critical to fixing both iron overload and iron deficiency. It's necessary to process xanthines, which include things like uric acid and caffeine. It's necessary to process sulfur, like sulfites. It runs sulfite oxidase. It's necessary to run ALDH. So is selenium. So we need selenium and molybdenum to run ALDH, which I've mentioned several times. I do think that is the most important detox enzyme in the entire body. If you have a molybdenum deficiency, you are much, much, much more prone to yeast and fungus issues. So it's pretty darn important, but that nobody knows about it. It's so important in soil science that soil scientists used to calibrate everything else in the soil to the amount of molybdenum in it. So the molybdenum was the leader, and they would calibrate everything else to it. They don't do that anymore. And what's our soil science? How good are our plants these days and our fruits and vegetables? They're freaking garbage. The other things that we do use, lactoferrin. Lactoferrin's too big to discuss here, but it is a protein derived from milk. It's in human milk. Lactoferrin in your body is in every fluid in your body. Tears, saliva, sweat, everything. Lactoferrin, we make it. But, it's kind of hard to get a human source of lactoferrin. There's not a lot of, and it's very high in breast milk. Nobody's buying breast milk these days. Nobody's making supplements out of breast milk. And lactoferrin from cows is about 60% similar to human lactoferrin. And it's a lot easier to get, and there's no vitamin A in it. The benefits, when people talk about the benefits of colostrum, it's really the lactoferrin in it. That's what they're getting out of it. So we just decided to skip the colostrum, because if you ever freeze colostrum and you like actual liquid colostrum and you look at it, you know what color it is? It's very yellow because it's full of vitamin A. So we get to avoid the vitamin A, we get to avoid all the other milk stuff, all the excess calcium, all the vitamin D, and we just get this protein that actually the research shows helps to fix your bile duct leakages. That's what lactoferrin does. That's the list of the supplements that we use, and I'm very critical about what is in my supplements and how we use them, and I tend to make them as often as I can a single ingredient. Why is that? Because if you get a combo supplement, which everybody's making these giant combo supplements, right? You get a combo supplement, and if you don't get along with one ingredient in there, you don't get along with the whole supplement. So why don't we do them all as all individual ones, and then you can up this one or lower this one, and you can up this one or lower this one, and you can figure out what exactly works for you based on both how you feel, and if you're doing testing and consultation with me or my other practitioners, then we can look at your hair tests and your blood tests. We do both, and we can adjust them based on both the labs and your feedback and your observations. So we really take all of this very seriously. We take the feedback and observations really seriously, but we just listen to the symptoms first. I'm teaching you how to observe your own health within this framework. I give you the framework, and I tell you how to observe things and how to adjust things, and your job is to do that. I'm giving you the tools. I am teaching you how to fish. I am not giving people fish.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's funny, because my next question to that was sort of, is someone looking for some maybe straightforward tips or hacks that they might be able to implement into their, maybe they're busy, they don't have time to sit down with specialists and go over these things. What would you recommend for that person?
Well, actually, that was going to be the tweet that I mentioned that I never went into. Simple things that you could do. Stop all vitamin A or carotenoid related supplements, medications, cosmetic products, I have research showing that you can get vitamin A toxic through your skin. Anything you put on your skin, this is critical to know. I posted a paper the other day, nail polish toxins. They had women put on nail polish, and I think 24 hours later, they measured a metabolite of the toxin that was in the nail polish. They found it in all the women. Sunscreen, they put sunscreen on. 8 different compounds in the sunscreen. They found them 24 hours later in the bloodstream of people who put it on. Whatever you put on your skin is going in your blood. It is. Your skin absorbs anything. The thing that people need to not fool themselves with is thinking that if they eat bad things or if they put bad things on their skin, that it's somehow not getting in their body. Like their body just rejects it. No, it absorbs. If you want to call your skin and your intestines in a way sort of dumb because they just take in anything, yeah, if that's the way you want to think about it, do that. So then you must care for them. You must be smarter for them and not put toxins on your skin. So the rule is generally, if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your skin. Stop all vitamin A supplements. Stop trying to eat more vitamin A. So if you're like encouraging your diet to eat more vitamin A, don't do it. Then we have vitamin D supplements. Trash them. Absolute garbage. I go over this on multiple podcasts. Vitamin D3 is sold as rat poison. It is sold as rat poison in rat poison, mouse poison baits. You can look it up. Cholecalciferol, same thing that's in your supplements. People will say, oh, it's the dose that makes the poison. Well, they're eating a lot of it at once. Yeah. Vitamin D is a fat storable compound, which means that if you take in more than you excrete on a daily basis, especially if you're taking mega dose supplements, you're going to accumulate that toxicity and you're going to get chronic toxicity. If you are in physical pain of any type, and you do these things for a month, you get off as much vitamin A as you can, even if it's just supplements. You get off the vitamin D supplements. You get off the nightshades. And if you really wanted to take it to the next level, you get on some topical magnesium that you tolerate for 1 month. I would bet money that your pain is 50% less in a month. Easy. You may notice your digestion problems go away. It's huge. And this can be fixed. You can make huge improvements in this quickly. So that's like some very simple things. Little simple thing you can do for a month and see how your pain goes.
Yeah, like in terms of like long-term strategies, right? Or is there anything you recommend for maintaining overall health and preventing issues that could occur in someone as related to toxic bile?
Well, in general, this is short-term, but it's also long-term. When you have an issue come up, like let's say you get a headache, think about what you've done that day and maybe the day before. Like look at things you did differently. When you change something in your life, whether it's you take something new, whether it's supplement or pharmaceutical, or you start a new exercise program, or I don't care what it is, watch your response for especially the next 3 days. Like try to only add one thing at a time. Try to change one variable. You are as the science experiment. So if you read some new protocol on the internet and you're going to add 8 things at once, and you add them all at once, and then all of a sudden you go, I don't feel good. Which one is it? You have no idea what it is. You started 8 things at once. It could be any of them. And then you can either take them all away or you can take them out one at a time to figure out what it is. So you can at least see if there's a short-term response. Then another fun thing that people can do about foods when you eat something. If you feel like you have problems with foods and you're trying to figure out, I know I'm not eating something that gets along with me, but I don't know what it is. This is a cool trick. You take your phone, you take a picture of the food that you're going to eat. And then a half hour after you eat the food, you're going to take a picture of an indicator of how you feel. Do you feel good or do you feel worse? So all you do is you take a picture of a thumb up or a thumb down. I did this for a while. I looked back on it and it was like, it was nightshades again. Like I slip up and I started eating them again and I started taking pictures and I could look at what was the common thing in the food when I'd have the down. And I went, stupid. I'm like, I know this. But that's sometimes, we quit things and then they let them slip back in and we have the same problem. Quitting things is hard. Don't ever expect to quit things the first time. I mean, you can, but don't be upset at yourself if it doesn't work the first time. And you get better at quitting every time you do it. So keep trying. Those are some long-term things. One of the things we know from, like, if avoiding those in general over time will be good. The supplement, when the media comes after the supplement industry, when the media wants to badmouth the supplement industry, there are 3 things that they always use to do it. Vitamin A, beta carotene, vitamin E. These are both vitamin A. Beta carotene turns into retinol. So vitamin A and beta carotene are the same vitamin A toxicity thing we talk about. Vitamin E, tocopherol, tocotrienol, they end in OLs. They are alcohols. They are fat storable alcohols. And they actually help you to store about 20 times more vitamin A in the liver. So it's all connected to vitamin A. So long term, you store fat soluble compounds in your liver. You store fat soluble compounds bound to fat. So you need fat to store them. Fatty acid esters. Don't add too much fat to your food. Humans are not designed for high amounts of fat. We're not. I don't care what anybody says. If you look at what you would be eating out in the wild, if you were out there with a gun or a knife or whatever, and there was not giant, cows that have these cushy lives and all this stuff, game meat is super lean, right? Fruits and vegetables, there's no fat. Like grains and beans, there's really no fat. You don't have oils around. Dairy is like, even, I always tell people, like, when you think about people in the past eating a lot of dairy, think of the Little House on the Prairie where they had like one cow for the family and it would only produce milk for a while after the calf came out. They did not have this milk all year round. And then if they wanted to have a lot of dairy fat like butter, you were left with skim milk. And then what would they do with the skim milk? They'd feed it to the pigs because skim milk is good at fattening up pigs. Milk is a growth food. If you're done growing upwards, as I say, the only way you can grow is out. Those are some long-term things that you can do.
Yeah. What about people who are into tech? Wearables are a big, right? Is there anything that you might see tech-wise that would help enhance our understanding and management of these toxicities that maybe are already out there or on the horizon?
So there's, in terms of tech, I'm not a Luddite, but I'm not like super into tech. I do think what we are trying to do is we are going to start running. My goal is to eventually have a lab where I can test the blood for what are called retinol esters. Retinol esters is retinol, vitamin A, bound to a fatty acid ester. These are how we store vitamin A in the liver. They are not supposed to be floating around in our blood. It has been determined that if the retinol in your blood, total retinol, if more than 5% of it is retinol esters of all types, you have vitamin A toxicity in your liver. So it means the liver is spilling vitamin A bound to fat into your blood. So this is like one of the potential indicators of vitamin A toxicity. Guess how many labs in the country or in the world do this for lay people?
None. Yeah.
None of them. It's in the literature. There's one lab in the US that runs retinol palmitate, which is about 60% of the retinol esters in the liver. But it's not 100%. Why don't they run the whole test? Like it's weird. It's almost like they don't want to find this problem. So one of the goals is to eventually run a lab, so I can add some more blood tests. We can do more bile testing in the blood, maybe get some more patterns for diseases, really important things. But other than that, like, we're not real techie. All of us know it can get very neurotic very quick. And I kind of don't want to add. I think people have enough to think about these days. And even doing my program, like, there's people come into the Love Your Liver program, they're like, this is the most comprehensive and biggest program I've ever seen. And I go, this is my life's work. I take things that work from all sorts of sources and we put them together. And you don't have to do them all at once. You can go piece by piece, and each thing you add will help. And so the tech thing, none of it changes what we do. Like, our foundational principles and concepts, we do them. The tech doesn't change. If people are data geeks, cool. Like, assemble the data, send it to me. I love it if we show these improvements. That's great. It is possible we could do like MRIs to look at iron overload in the liver. Here's what I don't want to do. Here's what I insist on not doing. I insist on not potentially making people more toxic or sicker through any intervention or tech. So like EMF stuff, I don't want to add EMF to people's lives. Like people would say, can I do a liver biopsy? And I'm like, liver biopsies can have problems. Like you can bleeding and other stuff. Like I don't need this information to get you better at all. I don't want to put people in more danger to try to get them better or just to try to justify to the world what we're doing is working, because we can just look at their symptoms and then we can look at other labs that are easy to get. So yeah, I'm not a tech geek per se.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, how about if you had to take one thing from this conversation that you wanted listeners to remember? What would you say that would be?
That vitamin A is not a vitamin. Vitamin A is a toxic compound. Toxins do things. So if you think vitamin A does something, yes, it does things. Pharmaceutical drugs that are poison do things. Toxins do things. So don't be fooled that it does things. Long term, it accumulates in its toxin, and we don't need it. We have, and just as that proof, we have multiple people who have gotten their serum retinol down to below lab detection limits. They technically have no retinol in their blood, and this took them years to get to. And they are in better health than they have ever been. We continue to show that this is not a vitamin. Well, vitamins as a whole, that whole word, that's like a psyop word. So every time I say vitamin A, I have to say vitamins. So every time you hear it, you go, it's good for me, it's necessary. Vitamins as a whole, a lot of it is just BS. But especially the fat soluble. Well, vitamin K is the exception. Vitamin K we do use. We're supposed to make vitamin K in our gut. But I have multiple studies showing that vitamin A depletes vitamin K. So we have all these people today thinking vitamin K solves everything. And I'm like, well, maybe if you got rid of your vitamin A toxicity, you wouldn't have a deficiency. So anyway, vitamin K is something we do need. The vitamin D supplements and the vitamin A and the vitamin E, generally fat storable things, be very, very careful. But yeah, vitamin A is not a vitamin. That's the big thing.
And how about for listeners that, want to find more about your work and become a part of your community? Where would you direct them?
Well, my main website for people who are interested in doing like private consultations. And one of the things we do different than everybody else is with each consultation, we give 6 months of support, like Zoom small group support calls. That's something I don't believe in just doing a consult and then sending people off. Like we are here to help you because we are teaching you how to do this, and that takes time. So consultations and supplements that you can find them at nutritiondetective.com. We're coming out with some really cool stuff soon. We have, if people wanted to join my do-it-yourself health recovery program, which is called the Love Your Liver program, that is at members.nutritiondetective.com. It's a mighty network, and we have like over 2,000 people in there. Super helpful. It is what I believe that social media should have been, which is people coming together to help each other along the way. People say that it's like the most helpful place they've ever been before because everybody's just there trying to do the same thing. On Twitter, I'm NutriDetect, NutriDetect. That's where I'm posting the most. We have presences on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, but Twitter is where I like to, the battleground. So anyway, yeah, that's and read my on Twitter, go on my profile and look at the what I call my pinned thread of threads. So it's pinned, it's the top thing, and it's just thread after thread after thread, and you can go read all of those. So yeah, those are the best places to find me. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure to put all these notes. In the notes, have all these links ready for people to go and visit. And listen, thank you so much for your time today and sharing. I've learned a ton. I'm sure our listeners have too, Dr. Garrett.
Absolutely. It was fun. Thank you very much for having me.